Right, here to talk a little bit about recovery. It's Thursday, getting to the end of February here. So if you're joining me live, you can always, I think I can see the comments in real time if you shoot some to me. If you don't, I'll catch up with them later. I want to talk about a little bit about triggers and avoiding your triggers. Uh, One of my things is gambling, right? That was my real problem. And what do I do to avoid gambling triggers? Well, if we live in a society like we do, let's just use alcohol as an example. You're going to see alcohol ads, you see alcohol everywhere. Well, for me, I was never a sports bettor, but I see endless in my feeds on Twitter, X, and other online sites, lots of gambling sites, right? Lots of pushes for billboards for casinos advertising. It doesn't give me the willies or make me wanna go out and do it again, but I avoid those places, okay? So I don't go to the casino. I avoid, sports betting conversations. I have a lot of friends that do sports betting. If they're talking about those things, I'm not gonna participate. I don't wanna get lulled into that. If somebody's playing cards with a traditional 52 deck of cards, I try to avoid those situations. I don't go into casinos. I don't go near gambling devices. But as you walk around the wide world now, we've got these Keno machines and these skill play machines here in Pennsylvania propping up. I went to a laundromat a couple years ago that I hadn't been in years because, as you guys know, I was in jail. Well, I got out and I go to the laundromat, and in the back they've got these slot machine type games, and I remember thinking like, wow, I didn't know this had infiltrated to this point, and you see them around here now in smoke shops and mini marts, even restaurants sometimes. I was in a restaurant not too long ago, and I saw they had a couple of these machines over there. Those are things that I'm afraid of, and what do I mean by that is I don't wanna be near them. I don't wanna participate with them. It's a trigger for me, maybe? I don't know because I don't hang around them, right? So when in the cognitive behavioral therapy realm, people, places, and things, right? Identifying your triggers, the places, the people, and the things. And for me, the gambling paraphernalia, the things we use to gamble, right, um, are things like cards and dice, roulette wheels, that sort of thing. And so I consciously make sure to avoid those things. Okay. Um, it's not something that I want to be touching. It's not something that I want to be around. If you're an alcoholic, in recovery, if you're an addict in recovery, you've got to avoid those people, places, and things. And again, I know this sounds like very basic advice, and it really is. In the 12 steps, when we identify, our failings and how we end up where we are, you can combine that with cognitive behavioral therapy. Some of the steps mesh well with that. That's something we can talk about another day, which is where we can compare different parts of cognitive behavioral therapy to the 12 steps and which of the steps most suggest that that would be. Now, some people in recovery will say, oh, well, the 12 steps have to be read alone. I'm a big believer in combining multiple forms of therapy. You got to throw everything you can at the addiction problem. The addiction problem will throw the book at you. It will lead you down blind alleys. It'll make you do things you never wanted to do. It'll ruin your life. Um, so just throw every tool you can find at that problem. So what I remember is that when I gambled, I had to go to a casino, right? When I gambled, I used dice at the craps table, I used cards at the blackjack table, and slot machines. Those were the 3 devices of gambling that I avoid. Now, people, I don't hang out with people who gamble regularly, or at least when they do gamble regularly. Same idea, if you're gonna go hang out with a crowd that drinks alcohol and you're a recovered alcoholic, you're just putting yourself in a bad situation where temptation can occur. Now, I will tell you that one of the lonelinesses of recovery was when I stopped gambling and going to the casino back in it's almost 3 year or almost March 3rd of 2024, so it's almost 11 years now, as a profound sense of loss because I'd spent so much time in the casino socializing with the other gamblers, some of whom were also obviously problem gamblers because they were there as often as I was. Those would become my friends. That was my community at that point in my life. And any of us leaving addiction, whether it's the people we ran with in the bars or the people we ran with in the alleys, the people we did drugs with, the people that we engaged in our addictions with, that community of addicts that we surrounded ourselves with. Now we've got to surround ourselves with a community of recovering addicts, right? But there was this sense of profound loss because I had really stopped socializing with my original friends, my non-crazy gambling friends. I was over at the casino all the time, and so here back here in Carlisle, the people that I used to hang out with, wasn't spending a lot of time with them. I'd lost connections with people. The deepness of those connections had been eroded by my constant need to be at the casino and gambling, and so the only connections I had, and as superficial as they may be, were the dealers and the other gamblers and the people at the restaurant, at the casino. They had become my social network, and so, again, hanging out with people who are doing those things kinda might suck you back into it, and so I know that it's tough to make new friends. I know it's tough to leave people behind. I did lose people that I do think have my best interest at heart that I would have met there. Um, but they're going to continue to gamble. They're gonna continue to revolve around those activities. It may not lead to the sort of rock bottom that I hit, but I had to give them up. And there was, some struggle with that, with just the idea, but also the loneliness that created. I was eventually able to, get back into, uh, normal socialization with non-gambling people, and then I went to prison, did 5 years there, got a lot of socialization, had a harder time removing myself from gambling in prison because no matter what the government tells you, it's widespread, wide open drug bazaar, alcohol, and gambling going on in prison. And if those things aren't going on in the prison where you're at, you might be in the wrong prison because at least I was in county, state, federal, private, whole bunch of different institutions. And I'm telling you, uh, that stuff was popping, right? So they used to have a Texas Hold'em game right off the corner of one of my cubicles that I lived in a dormitory at one point. It used to annoy the hell out of me. But that was something I had to deal with. There, I couldn't remove myself completely from the situation. I just had to make conscious effort not to observe the game, not to fall into the rhythm of listening to the people playing the game. So, my thesis for tonight is think about cognitive behavioral therapy. Think about what it could do for you. Um, Look it up. Just Google CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy and addiction. It's used for other psychological issues as well. But from an addiction standpoint, there are positive tools that will make sense to you even as a 12 stepper or if you're not a 12 stepper. But they're powerful tools. And so I always like to say it this way: if you used to go from work to happy hour and get a DUI, but every time you drank alone, you didn't get a DUI. Alcohol is one of the problems, but there's also a people, place, and thing in there, right? And the people and the place, happy hour after work at the bar, was really pulling you out of whatever comfort zone you were in or whatever modulation you had to not act out criminally, right? So if you can remove alcohol, you'll solve the problem entirely. But alcohol is always gonna be with the coworkers at happy hour at the bar after work. So if you remove happy hour after work with the at the bar with the coworkers, you've not only removed the alcohol, but you've removed the social situation and the opportunity that's been leading to these DUIs, right? So you can approach the problem with multiple safety measures. The goal is not to lapse back into addiction. The goal is to stay where we are, which is in recovery. And so CBT becomes a very powerful way of planning out what works for you, what hasn't worked for you, what could work for you, and layer it with whatever other recovery program you're working on. So just some thoughts for today. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back with you soon.